From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, a show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok. I hope you're seeing me clear. I just realized it's raining in Burbank, and it usually destroys my internet. Hi.
Oh.
We can see you, cap and all. And
yeah. Jennifer Landa, I am here. There was rain. I heard the pitter-patter, but now it's gone, I think.
It's a little pitter-patter. Yeah, it's leaving.
Little pitter-patter. I've been trying to walk every day, and I'm going to just have to do circles in my apartment. Or put on a hat. I don't know. It's really challenging. It's hard to be me right now. Anyway, we're excited to be here in the rain as we record with an episode that is questions of the everything. We've got questions from kind patrons on our Patreon about Star Wars, other pop culture, life itself, sometimes a blend of all three. We can't wait to dive into two great questions today, but we want to let you know first that, as always, today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. We have a recommendation. It is the two words that, if you're a Star Wars fan, are probably the most prominent thing on the internet right now, which is Dark Disciple. This is a great book, a great novelization of Clone Wars episodes that did not get produced. It is written by Christy Golden. Speaking for myself, it's one of my favorite Star Wars books. It's got some very juicy, philosophical, interesting stuff, and just some very romance-focused stuff. A very different Star Wars story, and hey, features that Asajj Ventress character we've all been talking about. You can download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. One more time, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. Ken, we also have an ask.
We do have an ask. We'd like to ask you to consider going to patreon.com/ForceCenter and supporting us there. We got a goal right now. If we reach 400 paid subscribers, we're about 389. We are going to start doing film commentaries. Again, I say again because a few exist on our YouTube channel, but we're going to do them as audio commentaries that will be available for purchase to the public. He said like a flight attendant, but exclusive to those on Patreon. And you get to help us decide what movie to do next, or just what movie to do if you want us to take a look at something again. But that happens when we reach 400 paid subscribers and supporters on patreon.com/ForceCenter.
You connecting it to the way that flight attendants talk about what is available for free or for paid made me think of the age-old question, food or not food, during commentaries. I myself am a not food person, but I've heard some commentaries where like, you needed a bag of nuts during this 2 hours of your life.
Oh.
Yep. Just eat into the microphone. All right, we are excited to dive into these questions. The first one comes to us from Will Culbertson. Will says, "Greetings, ForceCenter. Wanted your thoughts on an interesting what-if scenario. The scenario is this. Instead of his own cross-guard lightsaber, what if Kylo Ren had been wielding Darth Vader's red lightsaber from the start of The Force Awakens? Assuming that the three films play out exactly the same otherwise, how do you think that one little detail would have affected the themes and deeper meanings of the films, as well as the audience response to them? Thanks." Thank you, Will. This is fun. There have been actual Marvel What If series. There's rumors and rumbles and desires always for a Star Wars What If, and here we're going to get to act one out. I want to start with the last part of Will's question, the audience response. Jennifer, if everything else had been the same about the sequels, but Kylo didn't have his distinctive blade, had Vader's legacy blade, what do you think the audience response would have been, time traveling back to 2015? How do you feel about that?
It's hard to imagine. I don't know if it would have been positive. I feel like people would have felt like, oh, it's just a young Darth Vader, Darth Vader 2.0. There could have been that criticism. A lot of questions, where did he get the lightsaber? Blah, 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 right? I just don't know I don't know if it would have worked. It could have. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this because, yeah.
I think it's where my mind goes too, of like, I think if Vader's blade had been in there, the narrative and the story would have been built around it more. I think, maybe the helmet wouldn't have been there. So that would have been the connection to the grandfather. I think it would have changed some other beats with, I think there would have been a lot more about sort of symbolizing Vader's blade as one side of the coin and the Skywalker legacy blade as the other side, all that, it's hard for me to imagine it just dropped in. But my mind, in terms of audience reaction, goes to the exact same place as you, of it would have maybe raised the same questions and complaints that other legacy elements in the sequel trilogy did. Of
Yes.
okay, do any of these people have anything new? we got Luke and Anakin's old blade. We got Darth Vader's old blade. We got X-wings and TIE fighters. Finn can't even look around the Falcon without finding the remote. We got the Dejarik. We got to have everything. Right. And also knowing from personal experience that some people were extremely bothered by Maz Kanata's line about the Skywalker legacy blade. You know, where'd that come from? That's a great question for another time. If it wasn't as pointed with Vader's helmet, everybody could just be like, guess Kylo spent some time on Endor.
Right.
But with the blade, you know, especially in 2015, where did the blade end up when Luke chopped Vader's hand off and then the Death Star blew up? I think having two different blades that raise the question of where did it come from for the fans who already don't like that. And you know, I have one friend who's just like, I was out. I was done with the movie. I should have, because like nope. They're people who did. We do not want the tip of the iceberg storytelling. Like, and we particularly don't want it underlined the way Maz Kanata does.
Okay.
You know?
How'd they get through A New Hope? But
right.
Wow.
It was a long, intense dinner. Yeah. So,
oh my gosh,
Ken, where does your mind go to audience response? If it would have been, as Jen and I are thinking, if it would have compounded some of the legacy and answers complaints.
Will Culbertson has been a longtime Force Center supporter, contributor, question asker. And Will, I love your questions. I love you. I don't want any of this to happen. I'm glad this is a what if. I'm so glad we don't have to deal with. To your, I could hear some of the people in my life back then in 2015, some who are still around now, going, "Oh, nothing new," and that would have been a problem. That wouldn't necessarily have been right, by the way, as we have even discussed. Even the there's nothing new in Force Awakens thing is, I think, just patently wrong at times. It's so many. There's so many new things. There's familiar things, and there's some things pulled forward. Totally, you're not wrong about that, but analyzing it gives a different answer. But to this, it would have been maybe a bridge too far for some. I think there would have been kind of a cool aspect to it. I don't think I have an outright problem with it, but it's the question of how do you think this one little detail would have affected the themes and deeper meanings of the film? I think it changes things drastically. I think it takes away from what Kylo does Starkiller Base to Han Solo. You know, kills his dad because he thinks that's the thing he needs to move forward. You've heard these interviews recently of Adam Driver and take the they didn't plan thing to take that out of it. Just Adam saying, yeah, I played this character as if he was continuing to fall into the darkness. It wasn't Vader sliding to light. It was Kylo Ren crawling to the dark and each step along the way. And I feel that if he's got the helmet talking to him, Vader's helmet. But if he had the blade, it would have just been starting out from I am convinced of who I am. Right. I am the next Vader. I am Kylo Ren. I am the power. Where I think his weakness is the doubt. That's raised for his victory, right? Taking the mask off in the dual interrogation scene. I know your weakness. You know you're not Vader. And I think all that starts to change. Where the pursuit of this, for lack of a better term, good blade, right? The blue blade of the Skywalker clan, so to speak.
The hero's blade.
Hero's blade.
Right.
His pursuit of it is to try to take that and change the legacy and change it and make it his. Versus he might have just been like, whatever, I got a red one. Like the red one. Not the one that he adapted that is broken and cracked and all those great themes behind his blade. And so that I just this is why I don't want a Star Wars What If series. If they do, I'll watch it. I don't watch the Marvel ones. I'm not engaged enough to know, but it's just like I really love what they came up with. I'm standing behind that. So Will, I love you. Your question though caused some torment in me.
Some Kylo Ren like torment. Yeah, I think what does it say about how far along on his journey, how committed he is, or how much is he sort of just cosplaying? And I think
yeah.
Kylo Ren for me is in some ways is one of the most new things about Force Awakens on a sort of thematic level of what does the evil look like to different generations? What does choices look like when you're burdened by the legacy of the past, which is to me so much what the sequels are so successfully about. And regardless of who planned what when or who wrote what when, if you just watch the films and interpret them as text, they're so clearly, relentlessly, effortlessly about coping with your legacy. And
Mhm.
for me, him just having Vader's blade skips what's fascinating about him, which is he's trying to become something he isn't. Vader fell, and Vader was committed, and there was no backing him off his path. And Kylo is trying to be Vader. So yeah, having his blade would have been like, it could have been, I'm propping myself up by just dressing in his, I'm just wearing his clothes. Or as you suggest, Ken, it could have more communicated. He's already at the end of his journey. And I think for me, what we got, this mixture of cosplaying and stumbling toward what Kyle thinks he is meant to be. We get the sort of cosplay aspect of it by wearing a mask when he doesn't need it. There's no medical or appearance reason for him to have it. He's cosplaying as Vader. And that blade that we eventually, learn through other storytelling, or I guess by freeze framing in The Last Jedi, is his blade, is great. It's him trying to change himself. And you can talk about the crossguard as well. We needed a new lightsaber. We wanted that same pop in the trailer, the way we got from Darth Maul's back in the day with the double plated. But the thematic, the wobbly, the shaking, that's who he is. That blade is the character. And I think losing that would make it an entirely different story.
Right. I think that the cosplay, you're nothing but a boy in a mask. He's trying so hard to prove he's not a Nepo baby, right? Like he's trying so hard to be like, no, I am this tortured soul, right? Like, go, I'm emo. But like, that's such a great point about he doesn't need the helmet. Like he's putting on all these things. And that's why I loved the cross guard, because when I saw that for the first time, it looked crude. It looked violent, right? It was such a huge tell of who this character is. And I thought it really played well with him being this modern villain that I felt very, very fresh for me. That's Kylo Ren is a fantastic character. Fantastic performance by Adam Driver, because we have seen kids like this who are just trying so hard to prove something.
Yeah, and that great story that he runs away from his family because they put all this legacy on him, and his way of running away is choosing a different part of his legacy. It's just it's a story of our time of being not being able, from Kylo's perspective, to find the value in our lineage, but rather being tortured that he can't escape it. And yeah, you could absolutely tell that story with Vader's blade, but it's so hard to think of missing out on his shaky blade. It's one of my favorite little things in the video game Battlefront 2. When you're playing the versus mode, the characters have dialogue that is affected by who they're with. Like, Grievous will say a specific thing to Han Solo, or like Palpatine, when he gets close to Chewbacca, I think says Solo's Wookiee. But when Obi-Wan gets close to Kylo Ren, he says, "Did a child make that lightsaber?" And it cracks me up, because like it's just a funny little joke, but it's the heart of it. It's the you're not this big scary man you think you are. You're a trembling, horrible threat to yourself and to others.
This has just turned into a celebration of what was with Kylo. Jen, it was you on an episode a long time ago. I remember you said plainly, you're like, anyone, and this is before Rise, but like anyone that tells him to take the mask off, he kills them. He needs it so much, other than the moment with Rey. And then even later on, we've discussed, Joseph and I think we went deep into this of he doesn't have the mask for about a year or so, or whatever the timeline is. And all of a sudden, Palpatine shows up and he's like, "I need that mask. I need to rebuild it, but put some red on it, glue it together, and I need to pretend again. I need people to see it. He's fluffing up his feathers, and I think that's part of the thing of his character.
I need to put on this fake face I've made for myself that helps convince me that I am this monster, this darkness." I think for me, if the Vader blade was in it also, in terms of changing it, I think it would have had to speak so much to the hero's blade. And I think it would have been this.
Yeah.
You are a son of this legacy. There are two paths before you. There's the hero's blade, and there is the blade of death that the galaxy trembled before, and which of these are you choosing? I think there was this choice to start as far into the story as possible, and Kylo had made his choice. The Vader blade almost makes sense to me if the story of Force Awakens had started earlier and it was about the fall of Kylo Ren, and I can see it then where he had encountered both blades, and he's and choosing between the symbolism of the two.
Completely changes the story. Sorry, Ken.
No. Well, I was going to say the same thing, Jen. That's the point of these. This is a great what if question, Will, essentially, because it would have been completely different, which is part of the fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The one moment that's like funny to me is I love the moment in Force Awakens where he's rejecting all this legacy except for the legacy of darkness to be on his true path. He needs to kill the father because he can't be defined by the father. Mm-hmm. And the second he sees the Skywalker blades, like, that's mine. the total Nepo baby, as you're saying, Jennifer. Mm-hmm. So if he already had Vader's blade in that moment, it would have been a total nerd collect them all. Like, I have 6 of the 7 Funko Pops in this line. And Finn's walking around with the 7th Funko Pop that belongs to me. There would have been a real like nerd collector. I must have them all to it if he was already walking around with Vader's blade and then wanted the Skywalker blade so bad.
Yeah. I don't know if it would have played out as comically and as directly as that, but if that blade flies into Rey's hands, he could have been like, whatever, take it. That's the blade of the one that died. I got the one that lived. Now, of course, he would have known the history of Vader and gone to his funeral pyre. But in that moment, he would have had that mindset. I'm going to continue that legacy. And there's a little bit of that. I get it. The helmet's speaking to him, right? So there's some of that there. But it would have been highlighted more.
Yeah. I think it is interesting that Will asks about the entire course of the trilogy, not just Force Awakens, and in theory, well. Who knows? Anyway, it's interesting that we return to the Death Star wreckage in Rise of Skywalker. There is the implication in the Aftermath books that people have found and are selling Vader's blade, right, Ken?
The Acolytes of Beyond, right?
The Acolytes of the Beyond, yeah. But, put that to the side for a second. We do return to the place where, in theory, the blade might have ended up and been buried. I could see some bit of resonance if he had got it, if that blade had traveled from that wreckage and he returned it to the sea where it was meant to be sunk. That would have had a nice little bit of poetry, but I really like him throwing his blade away.
Right.
It works. Any other thoughts on this? What if?
No, it inspires a lot, Will. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I have one other question jumping off of Will's question for you, Jennifer. How do you feel about a what if Star Wars show where there would be an episode like this of like, what if Kylo found Vader's blade? And that was an episode, or, what if Leia trained instead of Luke, or, what if the rebels didn't blow up the first Death Star in that kind of series?
I think, it would be very difficult for fans because we had Forces of Destiny that answered a lot of questions that we had, kind of filling in these little moments, and people did not like it. I loved the show, but there was a very vocal part of the fan base that was like, no. So I have a feeling that what you said sounds great. I love it. I'd green like that, but I think that people would not like that because this is not canon and this changes everything, or they're like, Disney sucks, why didn't they give us this?
It should have been that, right?
It should have been that. Kathleen Kennedy said no. It's like, okay,
ignoring that she would greenlight this show, like
exactly.
A tour of Kathleen Kennedy's mistakes. It's very funny. It's very funny. Yeah, I've seen headlines say rumors, so I have no idea if there's a what if series coming. There's been a second season of the Marvel one. People love the Marvel one. For me, the Marvel one is different because it is dealing with the multiverse, and all of those stories are like, if you wanted to, you could dive in. Getting introduced to Captain Carter is being introduced to a character that we can follow.
Right.
So it is different. Doctor Strange says he looks into all these different millions of realities to see which one. They are canon in a different timeline, or at least they can be. Star Wars is this different beast because it is about like your destiny is pushing you towards making a choice, and the choice makes a difference. Han doesn't show up to help Luke out, above Yavin. That's it. One and done. That's the choice.
Right.
So we get a what if Han just goes to the cantina and pays off Jabba. It's fun. It's fascinating, but I don't think it's got that same sort of marvel of like, and that's a new timeline, and now we could follow this Han and follow this galaxy. So I think it's kind of a different beast.
I agree with that a lot. Yeah, not to put a downer, water on the flames of anyone who wants the series. Would I watch it? Sure. And it's not that I'm someone who like needs canon and needs it. We're discussing that this week with Ventress and Dark Disciple, and it's like just have some patience to see where the story's going to go. And yeah, sometimes you might. Yeah, I get it, but I don't need it a strict adherence and to canon. It's just a little bit how I take it in. Now over the years we've themes and the whys and all that stuff. But for most of my life, I've watched things like Star Wars, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, even though you mostly know where that's going because of the books being so long ago. But like, I see it as a living history. So if Ser Jorah makes this choice, he made it, and that's the story, and that's what I've got to deal with as a fan versus theory, speculation, or wanting something else. And I'm not, and that's my way. It's not everyone's way. So that's why going back, and then you add in the ForceCenter conversations that have just maybe appreciate what's there in every little moment. That's why I don't need anything new. I love exploring what is there, more than just what is canon. Just what is there. What is there in the story.
Yeah, right. If there was a what if show, I would watch it. I think a lot of people would really, really love it. A lot of people have clamoring for it. I think this is our little, this is our ForceCenter preview of, I think this is what would happen. There'd be a what if. We would try to review it, and we would just end up talking about why we like the choices that were made. Right. I think that's the art of a really great what if is like, to me, I would love it if it was a little thing. Because then it's just talking about a divergent thing, not a correction or a different choice the creators should have made.
Right.
Because what if just becomes other drafts if you go for really big moments. But if you go with little, smaller moments of, what if R2 and 3PO, what if they didn't buy R2? What if Owen just said, I'm not buying an astromech today? Yeah. And we go follow R2's adventures. Then maybe it's just an excuse to follow R2's adventures. I think I could be like into that, but anything that starts to, I love Will's question, but this episode would turn into, they should have done that. They should have made a different choice. Yeah. And that is such a fine line.
It's fun.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you, Will, for the question and the questions that it made us ask ourselves. Turns out we really like Kylo Ren. Shaky lightsaber. We're going to take a quick break. If you're listening to audio, on video, we'll pause for a second. Like there's something wrong. And then we'll be right back. And we're back. We are going to take this next question from David Litchfield. David says, inspired by my recent rewatch of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I would like to ask the following. If you happen to pass through a time fissure, what era of human history would you like to explore and why? And now, as I'm reading this question, I realize I've never asked the important question of Jennifer. Have you seen Dial of Destiny?
No, I have not. So
never mind. This is a what if question. This is a what if question.
Look.
No, you don't have to have seen Dial of Destiny. I just suddenly realized I didn't want to be doing spoilers.
Well, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Do you want to time travel to a certain point in history and why? How about that?
That's the question.
Okay, that's kind of how I interpreted it. Is that fair? Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
I was never concerned that you wouldn't understand the question. I didn't want to accidentally go into a bunch of spoilers about the film. Okay. And have you want to? I want to time travel back before they spoiled that movie for me. Ken, where do you? We've tackled questions like this before, but I was fascinated to see that one of my answers did not change, and one of my answers did change massively. So where are you at? Have you changed from previous times we've talked about what eras of history you want to visit?
Probably not, because they're like my favorite eras of history. However, having I love Dial of Destiny. absolutely enjoy the hell out of that movie more and more. Having recently rewatched that, have also been in my, as I've mentioned many times on the show, really in my middle-aged World War II doc phase. I think I might need to go right to where the characters wanted to go, not where they ended up, but where they wanted to go, because I've become obsessed with the side plot in World War II of the amount of Nazis who did want to kill Hitler because they thought we're losing because of Nutball over there. And what if that happens, right? We win World War II in a lot of ways because Hitler's hubris never stopped and got worse. And so I'm fascinated by that's a what if oh God. So I might need to go back and just, I don't know, help. Is that a Tom Cruise movie? Like help
I don't
stop.
think
Help stop. It's a weird spot because then you're like, no, don't kill Hitler. I got to stop you from killing Hitler because we need him to be alive so we can lose. It's a weird spot. It sounds like I'll grab Tom Cruise, Vin Diesel, and we'll go.
Valkyrie. I've never seen it, but
and that's about the real and then Cruise. You're right. Yeah, he's in that. So
there was a window where there was an ad for Valkyrie at the front of every other DVD you could get from Blockbuster Video. So I feel like I've seen the trailer for Valkyrie as long as it would take for me to actually watch the film Valkyrie. But
yeah, same. So I'd be in this horrible weird spot of stuck between two outcomes. But yeah, so I'll start there. But I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the Roman Empire. I don't, but I do spend a lot of time thinking about these kind of historic what ifs. So that's the what ifs I like. Well, other history stuff, any era of I've talked about it, but whether it's swing in London in the '60s or New York comedy scene in the LA comedy scene in the '70s, anything that's about the start of a movement. I'd go to the Sunset Strip in the '80s just to watch Guns N' Roses, get together. I'm obsessed with that kind of stuff too, and just seeing and studying those eras. It's boring answers. I sound like I'm a dude that just watches a lot of documentaries in his free time, and I am.
Well, you rattled off a lot of historical Union activists in a previous episode, which was clearly like do I need to? How many documentaries is he watching a day? Do we need to check in? Does he need help?
Too many. Yeah,
Jennifer, where does your mind go of what times you'd want to experience?
Yeah, I had to think about this because I'm like, well, can't go there. That would be bad for me being Mexican American and a woman. So I'm like, if I just remove that element of it, right? I would want to go.
It's so true and sad all the same time.
Right?
It's really, really true.
Like, oh, the 50, no. Oh, no. Okay. So I was really trying to think about it. No, I'm not going to go down that wormhole. It was about toilets and how this king made people use the toilet because they were just like pooping in the halls and the whole kingdom smelled terrible.
This is crazy. Is there a doc on this?
I can't remember where I came across this, but I was like, that's fascinating because you see in art, this pristine artwork, but visualizing that it smells like poop gives it a whole new context, right?
Do you know Gardelou, the phrase Gardelou?
No.
It's what you shouted before you dumped your filth bucket out the window. So if you're walking down the street and you hear somebody go, Gardelou, you're like, okay, got to get out of the way.
No.
Look, I still to this day, if I'm walking on the street, I'll try to make sure if I'm with Grace, I'll walk on the outside so that if the Gardelou comes down on me, I take it. That's kind of where it comes from, right? So like that's.
Oh no! Oh my gosh! I'm sorry to take us down this road, but
these are the realities. We love we love There's a reason there's not like a scratch and sniff Jane Austen book, right? We love the romance of it, not the actual living conditions. Yeah,
right.
We don't talk about as much about the if I landed there I'd be murdered instantly, or the smells would really ruin my
Right. Do you ever watch the HBO series John Adams?
No.
Yeah.
There's that great scene where he and Abigail reunited, and essentially it's a love scene, it's a sex scene, and they have to undress each other for an hour. Like it's hilarious. It's so real. It's just, I love it. So Jen, I'm with you. I want this documentary. We'll call it The Kingdom of the Poop, and we'll go into it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, look, I'll take it to a classier area, like Mozart. I thought about like Mozart and how there's been so many stories about him, right? Obviously, I love Amadeus, and so I would want to see like how much of that was real. What was that like to witness such genius during that time? I think, but that poop might be a factor there too. So I don't know.
I don't know. There's any place future. I guess can we travel to the future where humans have solved the great problem? And
Oh yeah, you know the
don't have
Apple
to.
Vision Pro. That thing is really incredible. Have you guys seen the Apple Vision Pro?
What does it do to the
Does it
bathroom?
stop you from? Does it stop you from having to go to the bathroom? Because they
No,
should
but
lead
like-
with that.
It's
Yeah,
like a
that should be the number one thing in the presentation.
Your avatar has legs, and you as a human never have to defecate again.
Yes. So you can actually like travel. I think you're going to be able to travel and to not travel in time, but like, visit these historical sites. It's like a VR headset and
Okay.
it is incredible. But it made me think, I was like 20 years from now where virtual, like that kind of VR lifestyle is like common and everyone has it. What is that going to be like for me as an older lady? Like it's like technology has been moving so fast, right? Like for me, I
Yeah.
remember a time before the internet, but just like, wow, like this is the future of being able to like, you blink your eyes and you can like scroll on this like display. It's incredible. You guys got to watch the video. It's incredible. It's like $3,500. So I'm not getting it, but
There you go.
that's the future.
The divide between the elite grows.
Yeah. No,
yeah,
that is
right?
fascinating.
I won't be blinking.
I'm so fascinated about the VR and about whether it's clearly like amazing, right?
Yes. It's
And
incredible. You
and
can
the
watch
technology-
movies. Yeah.
Yeah, technology gets better and better, but there's still this. This is a total side topic. There's still this question of like, but does anybody want it, or is it just companies trying to make it happen?
I wanted after that video. I never wanted it because it blends like you can the whole idea is that like you can take meetings with this VR headset. You can like scroll through your texts. You can watch a movie and like in any room that you want and like enlarge the screen just by going like this. Like it's so user friendly.
Yeah.
And it's all connected to, obviously all the Apple products. It's like this seamless, it seems less daunting than other VR headsets.
I'm confused. Maybe a bunch of topics roll into one. I can take a business meeting in the Roman Coliseum. Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry,
this
it's
on.
me. I'm explaining this so bad, you guys.
then
I'm sorry.
You just
I'm
go
sorry.
like this and
So you could turn on a movie, or like let's say you get a phone call and you're watching this movie, right? All of a sudden that person comes up. You can take the phone call, still in that virtual reality. And you can it's like this, but like we would all be like in this,
God, everything is just Back to the Future 2, finally. We're finally at Back to the Future 2. And I don't want to sound like Bryant Gumbel and Katie Couric on that famous, and Ann Curry on that famous clip of, what's email?
What is?
It's got an @ symbol. What's...
It's me. I'm explaining this terribly.
We might be into it. Like that's the fascinating thing to me about like as a recreation. It's fascinating. Like being able to put on a headset and like truly believe that like I am in 1970s Sunset Strip. It's
exactly like
I
that.
can walk around and it looks real and maybe smells real. We can talk about whether we want that or not. That's a fascinating recreational opportunity. But then there's the other part of me of like, if I'm watching a movie in this virtual reality, like great, I'm totally in this other world. I'm surrounded by it. Let's say it's a movie with a sex scene, and I'm immersed in this, and that's weird. And then my dad calls on the FaceTime, and like suddenly his face is above somebody's butt. I don't know if that's something that I'm like, great, I can do it all. I don't want to have it all at the same time.
Joseph, pick up.
Hey, it's your old dad. Like, oh yeah, you're right on top of that guy's butt.
Oh my gosh. Right. Yeah. And it makes you less interactive with people around you, right? Like how are you going to watch a movie with your partner? Like that just, you're both like in these little things watching the same thing. I don't know. I don't know.
The thing to me that's fascinating about that, and it is the sort of like older science fiction, but like if technology got to a point where we could be physically brains in jars, but we live and function in a virtual reality like that. And to circle back, like we don't have the downsides of a body. You don't have to go to the bathroom. You're like,
don't have to sleep. Yeah.
And you can live forever because you're a brain in the jar and your tissues aren't deteriorating. Would we get to a point where you're walking around your virtual reality, well accepted as reality? We're basically in the Matrix. We're brains in jars. And, and you run into, somebody who was born in that system and they're like, elders, you were born in the before times. What was it like to go to the bathroom? What did it feel like? Well, let me tell you, kid.
What was a nap like? Yeah.
Yeah. What was
Right.
napping like? Carpal tunnel. What is that?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Right.
There
Well,
you go.
All
There
right.
you go.
Time travel.
We'll save this. We'll save this clip. Someone open it up in 20 years and see how
See if
close
their
we were.
predictions are correct. All right. So to get back to time travel, Jennifer, where did you end up going? Where did you want to go?
I went all over the places where I went. I went to Mozart. I went to the future. I don't know. I'm happy being in the present. I'll be honest with you. It's one of those things where I'm like, I'm just going to celebrate the now. Whew.
Yeah.
The now's hard enough.
Yeah.
It is.
So here's a couple for me. If it was the kind of time travel where it's like pop in, hit the button, leave, I would like to see some dinosaurs. I would like to travel back to dinosaur time, see one dinosaur, and then hit the button and leave, because I'm not like, I have no sort of weird pride survivalist of like, I could do it. I could live among the dinosaurs. That's not who I am. This is the answer I've had before, and similar to Ken's. If I could travel to about 1964 and go to Vegas, I could see Rat Pack in their heyday. And then I could take a very long and dangerous flight to London, and I could experience Beatlemania, Bondmania, and Dalekmania, the villains from Doctor Who, all at the same time on the streets of London. That would be phenomenal. When we talked about this before, a listener suggested a book called Love and Let Die, which is about Bondmania and Beatlemania happening at the same time. And I picked up that book. I'm going to read it soon.
That's great.
But yeah, that would just be like amazing. The new thing that occurred to me, and I'm really curious to see what you both think about this, is I think maybe at the top of my list would be, I would like to travel back to the 80s, to the era of my actual childhood, and walk around in adult eyes. It's one thing to know I experienced the world the way I did from literally a different height, but also from an entirely different, we've talked about so much of the nostalgia of like, everybody thinks they came from a simpler time, and
Right.
in one or two respects, maybe you did, maybe one specific thing was simpler, but we all think things were simpler when we were a child because we were a child and we didn't yet have the burdens and the knowledge. I would love to walk through the 80s and go, oh, this is what it was really like. And, you know, with some of the discourse that's happened, watching women in line for Star Wars, you know, things like that, things where like, my perspective was warped by what I was told when I was a child and what I experienced. What would it be like to experience my own childhood through adult eyes? Is that interesting to you, Jennifer, or terrifying to think of traveling back to the 80s?
That's a great answer. Would you watch yourself as well? Like, would you right? It'd be really, I'd be mad. I'd be like yelling at myself, like, say this, do this, right? Or you might go, oh, why did I react like that? That was not a big thing. And yet I took it so hard, right? So those types of moments, that'd be real. That's really intense. But I love that. I love when you go back to a place from your childhood and you're like, oh, this is actually not how I remember. Like, it seems so much more charming in my imagination, my memories, or like it seems so much bigger. And it's like, it's really a small little thing. It's always fascinating.
Yeah. Ken?
That's so interesting. You remember that one conversation we had, Jen, during the other center conversations about like where we grew up, where you and I were very close. We've discovered, went to the same church, all that stuff. We might have fought over big wheels in the church playground area. I got from my dad the address again of where we lived.
Oh, you did?
And I'm planning to get out there. It's so close to where I go to Disneyland or conventions and everything, but I've never gone. And I'm going to have exactly what you're feeling, Joseph, of the size, the feelings, emotions of that. Oh, that was really there. It seemed like the world, it was 4 blocks, right? So that would be kind of almost traveling to 1982 for me, as most I can. It's fascinating, not just to see how actually small the Subaru station wagon we had was, and that carb load is a real thing now. I would be like, that's a tiny little station wagon, but to actually see it again. Maybe VR will do that.
Yeah. For me, going back to the city of Portland, like the first time I did, it was dreamlike because I don't recognize buildings, but like somehow it's almost like, but this intersection, I know it, but I couldn't tell you how. But it also looked so much smaller, because literally physically, from my perspective, it was. But to,
Yeah.
to think of kind of having that real life experience we can of a place, but also just like all the people in it. And the time I lived in Portland, the height of Empire Strikes Back fever was so magical to me.
Mm.
And, to go back and just watch the adults and go like, oh, that kid's dad was was a was a creep. I didn't know, or oh wow, I didn't see that dynamic between these adults that's so clearly, obviously there, and I didn't know. It's like that stuff is fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting.
So 1980s, David. Thank you for the question. I would time fisher back to my own childhood era. And maybe go see myself, but at least the era I grew up in. Any final time travel thoughts for you, Ken?
Look, I want to go back and save Hitler to make sure he dies. So I think your answer might be a little more clear.
Yeah, that is a great Back to the Future sequel for sure. Yeah. Jennifer, any other time travel, VR, or toilet thoughts from you?
No, I need to go back and find this thing that started it all. I think it was a tweet that somebody said about this historical king or whatever.
I want to know.
That's it's amazing. Got to deal with reality. Deal with reality. All right, those are our two questions. Questions of the everything from Darth Vader's lightsaber to time travel. Well, we covered everything. Ken, you want to let people know where they can find us?
Yeah, we are on Twitter and Threads at ForceCenter Pod, promoting things over there. We're on Instagram as well. Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. We're available on many forms in terms of podcasts. Just search, you'll find us. Places like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and more. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. And you can support us directly as we set up top at patreon.com/ForceCenter. Follow me at Ken Napzok or go to my website, kennapzok.com for more. Had a good conversation with Mark Ellis this weekend about places we might be playing some new spots. And Joseph, I might have to ask you for some Portland recommendations, so stick around for that information on my website. Jen, where can they find you and your obsession with kings and toilets?
You can find some of my Star Wars short videos on Instagram and YouTube at Jennifer Landa or TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138.
Wonderful. Joseph, take us home, where I'm sure your newsletter has all this and more.
My next newsletter will be about the Oscar Wilde quote. We are all in the gutters, but some of us are looking at the stars, which is what I think about when I think kings and toilets. But now we're looking at the stars in VR. That's what new VR Oscar Wilde can tell you. Anyway, if you want to catch up with me, you can find me on all this social media at Joseph Scrimshaw. I've got a newsletter, a blog that I'm really excited about, coming out every Tuesday. You can find it by going to buttondown.email/finishyourmonsters. Also, had some good news this week that the short horror film I worked on with many wonderful people, including Ken, has been accepted into 2 more film festivals. I'll try to get more information out about where and when you can see the film if you're interested.
Love that. Love that. All right, my friends. So for lightsabers, commodes, and history and the future coming our way fast, this has been another episode of ForceCenter. Bye.